Summer's coming up. I'm motivated to get the summer body. Holidays are coming around. I'm motivated to look my best for the family that's going to see me, or I have a vacation coming up. I'm motivated to get in the best shape of my life.
What happens after the holidays? What happens after
Exactly.
summer? What
Yeah.
happens after the vacation?
What happens when you don't have the big urge of, I feel so motivated right now?
There's a difference between an outcome goal and there's a difference between a identity goal. But a lot of times what we found is people see results by Welcome back to the Higher Form Podcast. My name is Nick.
I'm Britni.
And today we are going to talk about why motivation isn't the problem.
Yes.
Motivation is a word that comes up a lot in our line of work.
Yes, very much so.
And I hear a lot of people talk about like, well, I've lost motivation. I'm not motivated. I can't do this because I can't stay motivated. And I think the real problem is not motivation.
It's lack of action.
Lack of action, right? So while a lot of people think that motivation is the thing holding them back, we're going to talk about what the actual issue is. And the real issue is a lack of clarity, a lack of direction, a lack of support, a lack of environment, lack of a plan,
Yeah.
a lack of discipline. So all those are buzzwords that we'll get into a little bit further as we dive into the episode. And motivation is one of those words that feels like it's tied to your energy in the moment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Like I'm
And
gonna go work really hard because I'm so motivated right
and I
now.
feel good. My energy's high. But
Yeah.
when energy is low and motivation is low, you got to have something to lean on.
Yeah.
And what we found, at least in what we do every single day in helping people create structure and systems to achieve their goals,
Yeah.
is that people are not lacking the energy or the motivation. They're just lacking the right game plan, something that fits their life, something that's sustainable, something that feels realistic.
Yeah.
I thought it might make sense to kick it off by just talking about what kind of situations do we end up in that make us feel like motivation is the issue. An example would be like in different seasons of life.
For sure. My initial thought goes to summer's coming up. I'm motivated to get the summer body, or holidays are coming around. I'm motivated to look my best for the family that's going to see me, or I have a vacation coming up. I'm motivated to get in the best shape of my life. Those are simple and obvious
Yeah.
examples, right? I think those are the ones that come to my head first.
What happens after the holidays? What happens after
Exactly.
summer? What
Yeah.
happens after the vacation? I think is where a lot of people start to get stuck in that short-term mindset.
Yeah, because it's like a 4 week stint of going really hard for something and then it's over. And then, I mean, that's when a potential rebound could happen, in
Yeah.
any way.
And it's not that motivation isn't a good thing. I think
Yeah.
that we don't want to demonize the word, right?
I
Or
think
the,
you're going to go through ebbs and flows of having
correct.
different things that motivate you, different goals that motivate you. And
Yeah.
that's okay. But what happens when you don't have the big urge of, I feel so motivated right now to do X, Y, or Z?
For sure. And it's where being able to understand and step back from a situation and get clear about what a goal is
Yeah.
and talk about more of why do I want this goal? How does this fit in the bigger picture of what I'm trying to accomplish or who I'm trying to become? And that's where the higher form mindset really starts to kick into this whole topic, right?
Yeah.
Someone with a higher form mindset is not going to just look at a short term outcome or lean on motivation to be able to power them from where they are now to where they want to be just to feel a certain way for a certain moment.
Yeah.
Somebody with a higher form mindset is someone who is going to be able to use motivation strategically, but also see the bigger picture behind where motivation will take you or what to do when you don't have it.
Yeah. Because, I mean, like I said, you're going to have ebbs and flows of when you have it and when you don't, but that doesn't mean that you stop doing the things that are going to progress you to what your ultimate goal is or your vision. And whether that's in your fitness journey, in your career goals, in your relationship
Yeah.
goals. I mean, you meet somebody new, it's all fun, but that dies down at some point. So, how do you sustain?
Yeah. How do you stay focused?
Yeah.
One of the things that makes this so difficult for people to do is the volume of noise in today's society.
For sure.
You get on Instagram and you see these influencers that are driving the Lambos and they've got these big, beautiful houses and they only post the highlight reels. That's what social media does. And so it's easy to start to think, man, this person's got the life. but that's not the reality of where most human beings are at.
That's a small
It's a
percentage of
small percentage of
people in the
people.
world, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and one of the things that I think is difficult is because we live in the information age where you can get access to things super quickly, it makes it a lot more difficult to be able to get to a point where you're not only getting the right information, but you're actually learning how to apply some of it.
Yeah, I
You know what I
think
mean?
that's where the biggest gap is,
Yeah.
right? There's information everywhere.
Yeah. So if you're somebody who's felt the pressure of trying to do it all and ended up burning out, we are going to dive in deep on how to be able to start to set yourself up for success even when you don't feel motivated.
Yeah,
Fair enough?
fair.
Cool. One of the things that is important to really lay the groundwork for this is just establishing the difference in types of goals that you can set. We have a couple books on the table here that have been instrumental in our own growth, and they've created these ideologies and frameworks for us to be able to look at what we want to accomplish and help us navigate how to be able to get there.
Yeah.
One of the books on the table, the bottom one, is The Comfort Crisis by Michael Easter. We got an opportunity to actually listen to him talk in person
Yeah. Yep.
a
That was
couple of
cool.
years ago.
You got to do challenging
Yep.
things. And if you're not doing challenging things, you're not pushing yourself.
Yeah. Well, it's what we talked about a little bit in that last episode was if you're not growing, where are you going?
Yes.
You know,
You're
and
stagnant,
for sure,
right?
right? You're getting better, you're getting worse. I used to have a coach in college that said that all the time, so
Mm.
it's like drilled into my brain.
You're either better or you're getting worse. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
And the whole premise of the book, not to ruin it for anybody who wants to check it out, but it's a good one.
It, he goes into a lot more detail.
Yeah, for sure. I certainly can't sum it up.
Yeah,
And as good as
obviously.
Brittany is at summing things up, I don't know that she'll give you the cliff notes of it as good, anyways. But one of the things I took away from that book was just talking about like every year you should do something that's a year defining event or a misogi.
Hmm.
And it's like Japanese term for a challenge, something that's really difficult, something that you feel 50-50 sure of whether or not you can actually accomplish it,
Yeah.
and something that is both mentally and physically challenging. So it was kind of a good framework for me at the time to lay out what are these difficult things I'm doing in my life to self-reflect on. Am I working towards a path of actually challenging myself to grow, or am I sitting in a place where,
Just doing the day to day, kind of going along with things. Yeah.
for sure, the second book that we have here, defining book, the one that talks more about goals, is Atomic Habits by James Clear. Great book, something I recommend to clients. I highly recommend reading. There's about probably like 20 different quotes from that book that I find myself
Yeah,
using
I
on a regular
know.
basis.
There's a lot of gold in there.
Yeah, for sure. And just to set the framework for all this is there's a difference between an outcome goal and there's a difference between a identity goal.
Hmm.
And what we're talking about with motivation is if I set the outcome, right? You talked about the vacation,
Yeah.
some of the other examples.
Hmm.
That's working hard to achieve a certain outcome, but if you get to that point, then it's like, what's next?
Yeah.
And from there, you have to have an identity goal so that you can start to do things to establish that new version of yourself and get to that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's laying that groundwork around, okay, what do I want to become? Who do I want to become? What do I want to achieve? And then how do I utilize motivation when it's there, but also power through when it's not? What is your advice for listeners around how to be able to work through that tension and how to continue to show up and keep doing the things necessary to grow?
I think that's where just like which we talk about this a lot with our clients too, just like your daily habits. When motivation's not there, you don't have that urge to be super productive or get the things done that need to be done. You have to at least be doing the basics. And those basics need to be like the things that are going to continue to help you maintain where you're at. So even if you're not making huge leaps forward, you're still brick by brick, just doing a little bit at a time, even if it's not like big chunks at a time,
Mhm.
right? You're going to go through seasons of ebbing and flowing of, where your stresses are in your life or where you need to be focused more and finding little habits that you can impact your overall goal every day.
Yeah, so just taking small steps basically.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Atomic Habits, the name of the book.
Yeah, exactly. I was just like building little habits, even if they're just small things. Like I'm going to make sure this applies to me. I want to age gracefully, so I'm going to make sure I do my skincare every single night.
Yeah,
If that's the only thing that I do, like at least I did that because that's going to support one of my long-term goals.
that's a great example.
Yeah.
And finding what is important to you,
Yeah.
identity.
Yeah.
Who would I want to become? I want to become the rockin' hot mom at 60 years old who's still got porcelain skin. You've literally said the porcelain skin thing to me, like
Porcelain,
porcelain. I don't know,
not
porcelain.
porcelain.
I'm thinking Porsche like a car
It's
here.
porcelain
Yeah.
skin.
Well, see,
But
I obviously am not into
but
skincare
yes,
or
but so you have to do every
porcelain.
day, you got to
I'll blame
take
that on the
care of
gum.
your skin.
Yeah.
And so those are like, that's just built into my routine that that's a part of what I do before I go to bed and when I wake up.
Yep.
So I don't have to think about it. It's become so habitual that, which takes time, right? You don't create habits out of nowhere. It takes time, but once it's there, it's like at least I have the base of that going for me.
Another thing that really stuck out to me in that book was habit stacking.
Yeah.
And in order to put a new habit into place, you stack it on top of something else that you're already doing. So you can associate when I do this, I also do
Yes.
that.
The new thing that you're trying to add in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. Like, I don't know if you want to talk about like the 6 steps for success we talk to clients about too, in regards to the basics, right? A lot of
Yeah.
times when you see somebody who is healthy and they're fit and they have all of what looks like all of their shit together, really,
Yeah.
you're thinking, man, they must work out 6 days a week. They probably never have eaten a piece of cake in their life. They are probably perfect in their routine. But a lot of times, what we've found is people see results by getting brilliant at the basics. So, one of the things that we do in our business
Hmm.
is we talk to people about 6 steps for success.
Yeah. So it's the basic 6 things that you need to be doing to get healthier, maintain your health, just overall be taking care of yourself.
Yep.
Exercising, moving 3 days a week.
Check.
Yeah. One. Two, eating whole foods and not a lot of processed foods, right? Obviously, you can get super granular with that with your macros and all of that, but in general, eating whole foods. Getting 8 to 10,000 steps a day, just movement, walking, just keeping going. Drinking half your body weight in ounces of water every single day. Stay hydrated, right? Five is limit alcohol
Mm-hmm.
because that's obviously going to impact your body in 100 different ways. And then sleep, getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night.
Yeah.
So that's our six.
That's right.
Yeah. Yep.
So, hydrating, sleeping, getting nutrient dense foods,
Mm-hmm.
getting movement in, getting strength training in, and then limiting toxins in your
Yeah,
body.
alcohol's not the only one, obviously, but
Yeah.
it's the main one that most people are doing.
Other things that I think a lot of people overlook on the toxin side are like what you eat out of, what kind of dishes you eat out
Okay, yeah,
of.
we could go down a whole rabbit hole
Yeah,
of
for sure.
toxins in our personal life.
But I
Plastics,
think it's
right?
important, like, it's not
Yeah.
to say that we're going to sit here and say, never drink a drop of alcohol again in your life.
Yeah.
And that's a really good segue to what we were going to talk about around balance.
Yeah.
Balance is not perfect. Balance looks messy. Balance isn't 50% here, 50% there, or a third, and a third. I think balance is one of those things that people get mixed up with a lot in regards to their concepts of how to stay consistent,
Like you're not going to be 100% balanced in every aspect of your life at all times.
Hmm.
Like we've had situations where you have to give a little bit more here and take a little bit more there. And sometimes that flip-flops. Again, this relates to your business, your personal life, your relationships. Sometimes you're going to be a little bit more present in the business and I'm a little bit more present at home and vice versa, depending on the seasons of life that we're in and where we're needed at the time.
I think one of the things that has helped us get where we are today is the partnership of working out that balance.
Yeah.
So if you're in a relationship, we said we weren't going to give dating advice, but
But we are married.
we are married. I wouldn't call this dating advice, maybe relationship advice.
Yeah.
Once again, we are not professionals.
Yeah. Correct.
But being able to lean on each other to create holistic balance between us. And I think that that just goes to the bigger picture idea of being able to create a support structure in your life
Yeah.
and putting other people around you who can help you figure out what balance looks like, whether that is a family member to watch your kids if you're a single parent, or having a coach to be able to take the decision fatigue out of what you do when you get to the gym, or
Mhm.
having a business mentor to help you avoid making the mistakes that inevitably people are going to make along the way. I think it's important to have support in your life to be able to figure out how to make balance work, but it definitely is not one of those things where it's like put this on one end of a teeter totter or a seesaw or whatever, and then put this one on the other, and they balance out perfectly,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, your energy and your focus is going to have to be split. You just have to figure out how to balance that.
You
That
got
that
it. You
makes sense.
nailed it. You nailed it. And I think you mentioned this a little bit earlier too, but like what works in one season of life isn't gonna work in every season of life. And
Yeah.
that's something we also run into a lot with people where they're like, I used to do this and it worked great for me, and now I tried doing that again and it's not working.
Yeah, because you're in a different season, different things are going on. Your attention is needed in mo either more places or different places
Yeah, not to mention just physiological changes on, especially when you talk about like training and
yeah.
nutrition and those sides of development, but even on the mindset side of it, depending on whatever context, there's so many different variables, you know?
Well, I think I, I'm trying to think about where you were going with that was like, if somebody's like, well, I want to be like I was when I was 20. It's like,
Hmm.
well, your life is 180 different now than it was when you were 20. So that's, you have to be realistic with what makes sense for where you're at in your life right now.
Yeah. And that's hard because
Totally.
of what you see on social media,
Yes.
because you see these people that are the anomalies, they are the
The
outliers,
one
they are
percenters.
the one percenters. And don't get me wrong, higher form is becoming the highest form of yourself so you can become a one percenter. And it's not out of reach for anybody. I truly believe that. I think we can accomplish anything that we really put our minds to.
It takes intentional effort
But it
though.
and it
It
doesn't
doesn't
happen
come
over and
easy.
it doesn't happen overnight,
Yeah.
And I think that goes back to this fallacy of motivation where it's like I'm motivated to become the one percenter. I'm motivated to be this, to accomplish this, to become that. And a lot of times most of the people that I've followed, they've come out and said, I've been doing this for 20 years. You've just seen the last two.
Yeah, for sure.
And another quote, I'm obviously big on quotes, but it's like don't compare your chapter 1 to someone else's chapter 20.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And I think that's what's happening a lot on social media in the fitness space specifically, right?
Yeah.
Somebody who's super fit, maybe they've been an athlete their whole life, and somebody who's not really working out is like, oh my gosh, I want to be just like that. It's like, well, that has happened over the last 10 years of them lifting and living and eating a certain way. So it's
Hmm.
not going to happen for you in 1 year, even, right?
Yeah, and you talk about it in fitness, and it makes me think about like how dramatically different your Instagram feed is than mine probably is.
Yeah. You mean
I
like when you're scrolling, like what you see
you see
versus
a
what I
lot
see?
different stuff than I probably do.
Yeah, for
Now we
sure.
get crossover every once in a while, right?
Well,
But
that's because the algorithm is targeting like, huh, your husband liked this.
they're listening to us. Yeah. Um, I think of it from a business standpoint too, though,
Yeah,
where I get caught up in that like a lot.
for
Where
sure.
I'm like, damn, we've been doing this for so long. Like, I should be at this point. Like, why am I not here?
Yeah.
But I think it's important to stay grounded and stay focused. And like, I lose motivation and feel like trash sometimes too. And I'm like, nah, I don't want to do this. But then that goes back to like this concept of identity, right? Like, who do I want to become?
Yeah.
And part of the process is like going through the, as you would say, ebbs and flows to be able to become that person. You have to go through those things, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
The big sound check there. You good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, what always works in one season isn't always going to work in the next. That's why it's so important to understand that you're going to have these ups and downs, and you have to test and refine what's going to keep you consistent during those time frames because inevitably you're going to fail. And if you can look at it through the lens of if I fail, I learn instead of you get better, you get worse. I think we've talked about that, but even shifting that even more to say yeah, I'm not necessarily getting worse. I'm learning lessons. And as long as you understand the lesson and the challenge,
Yeah.
then you can actually take something from it and still grow even during the harder times, you
Yeah,
know.
for sure. Yeah.
One of the things that helps stay on track is back to the atomic habits concept around identity is you can't really achieve or become the type of person you're going to be by just searching for the outcomes that measure whether or not you got there. You do that by making sure you show up as the person you want to become even before you are that person. So
Fake it till you make it.
100%.
Yeah.
It's continuing to act as something until you become it. I had a conversation with someone the other day where they're like, "Oh, I'm not good at that." And I was like, "You're not good at that
Yet.
yet." And it's easy to put labels on ourselves around, well, I'm not worthy, or I don't deserve that, or can't do that.
Or imposter syndrome could come into play here, right?
Yeah,
Like, oh,
we both struggle with that.
yeah, I think everybody does a
Yeah,
little bit.
and I think it's understanding that at the end of the day, like everybody's so caught up in all the things that they're paying attention to that nobody's got you under a microscope and is analyzing every move you make, even though I think because of the amount of exposure opportunity there is out there with social media, it feels
Mhm.
like, oh man, if I mess up once, then everybody's going to
People will
judge me.
remember that forever.
Yeah, it's easy to get in that negative feedback loop around, I can't because this, I can't because that.
Yeah.
I'll just do it when I'm motivated again, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
This idea of becoming a better version of yourself happens from paying your dues. When you're trying to get to a place where you haven't been before, you're going to have lots of ups and downs. You're going to have to show up, do the work,
Fail.
fail, reevaluate what went well,
Hmm.
adjust what didn't, show up, do the work, fail, reevaluate, repeat.
It's a cycle of learning again and again and again and just doing a little bit better every time you do it.
Yeah, I've seen some stuff on the internet about like this cycle of the entrepreneur
Mm.
where it talks about this unaware hope of how awesome things can be because you get excited about like, oh my God, I can achieve this, I can do this, I can go to this next level. And as you start to get to the peak of that excitement, you start to recognize the difficulty of what it's going to take to accomplish that. And you
Yeah.
come back down into this valley. And when you get down to the bottom of the valley, you start to recognize there's two different ways you can go from there. And I think that people end up going the wrong way there more often than they do the right. And if you would have just stuck with it in that time where it got hard, when you weren't motivated,
Hmm.
when you didn't feel like showing up,
You didn't want to do the
when
work.
you didn't want to do the work, it didn't feel like you were getting the results, you weren't getting gratification from what effort you were putting in. If you just keep doing the work, the one percenters, the people who are successful,
Hmm.
they stick with it long enough to work through those ditches, those valleys where I think most people expect that result so quick because well, I can have the information in 7 seconds by using some type of search engine to find it. Why can't I get the result in that time frame too?
Like you were saying, if you are trying to go to the next level or you've got a goal ahead of you, you're not always going to have the answers of how to get there,
Hmm.
but you can find the answers of how to get there. And then you have to figure out, okay, well, how do I implement those into what I'm doing now to help me lay one brick at a time to get to the next level, to get up there rather than trying to do a shortcut and not getting where you want to be.
Yeah, for sure. And I've seen other graphs, like I think in quotes and visions and frameworks,
Your
where like
analytic mind.
this, yeah, for sure. The best way to get from point A to point B, a lot of people think is the shortcut,
Yeah.
but the shortcuts end up starting over every single time. So like the short game is the long game.
Yeah,
You
for
know what I
sure.
mean? You just stick with something, you're going to get there. Small steps, big habits, but having that identity with who you want to become and acting like that person and learning from those mistakes, I think is ultimately what we're trying to get at with this whole concept here.
Yeah.
The question I think that can help people apply this is what kind of person do I want to become? Not who do I want to be at vacation when I get to vacation,
Yeah.
you know?
Because that's a short term, it's not that you can't have short term
They're
goals.
necessary.
Yeah, you have to have stuff to look forward to in life,
Yeah.
right? But it's overall like you want to, for example, you want to get in shape for your vacation because you want to feel confident and comfortable and in your bikini or whatever it is, right? Don't you want to feel like that all the time? So
Hmm.
shouldn't you be actively working towards making that a part of your lifestyle so you always feel like that, not for the 1 week of vacation out of the year that you try to get in shape for,
Yeah.
right?
And doing it in a way to get to that vacation where what you did to get there is something you can actually stick with. You said the word sustainable earlier,
Yeah.
and that's one that we toss around a lot. Not toss around, but use a lot,
Hmm.
just because the, like you said, the sustainable solution is going to look different than the quick fix.
For sure.
I think is important for people who are listening is like finding ways to relate with how we've applied these things in our life, both as individuals in the different roles that we're in, but both as like parents, as business owners, I know that we work with a lot of women and we have worked with a lot of women. So, from a female's perspective, someone who maybe has kids, someone who is juggling other things in their life, what are some of the different ways you've redefined what showing up looked like in regards to taking small steps? You've talked about having habits that were non-negotiables, for example, your skincare.
Yeah.
But what about more in regards to how to level up and continue to work towards becoming a better version of yourself versus maintaining your health?
Yeah, I mentioned in our first episode, I'm still learning because that's ever evolving and changing, right? I am continually trying to find ways, how can I be taking care of myself so I can take care of the family and the things that I'm responsible for?
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, our schedules every day are just like so different and unique, and not every week is the same either. I'm sure anybody with kids understands it's never the same.
Mm-hmm.
At one point in time, I was trying to get in shape for bodybuilding shows. I've done all this, I've done all that, and then you go through the change of having children and you're trying to find, okay, well, what are my goals now? And so personally, I'm trying to stay in shape for just longevity and feeling great in my skin. And that looks different than it did 5 years ago with what my goals were,
For sure.
right?
How do
So
you
life
how do you
changes.
apply that though now? What does that look like for you structurally?
Yeah, I'm strength training 2 to 3 days a week. I'm doing Pilates 2 to 3 days a week. We go on walks as a family all the time. I have been doing run club once a week, except for the last couple of weeks because of life. But I'm trying to stay as active as I can with my schedule and my demands.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also trying to make sure I'm taking care of my mental health too, which I think is a big piece of the puzzle, especially as a mother, any other mothers out
Yeah.
there, taking care of your mental health. And that's just finding ways to decompress your brain at the end of the day or at the beginning of the day or wherever makes sense, because life is busy and life is chaotic. And I think you have to find a way to manage it. And that might look different for everybody.
I know reading's big for you.
I like to read I try to read for like 30 minutes before bed. Sometimes I get tired faster than that and it kind of winds me down. But that's the point, is immersing myself into a story or a thought or just a different world or whatever helps my brain just like decompress from the stressors of the day.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps me from scrolling on the internet at night and watching TV and things like that. They did just come out with a study that says people who read are less likely to get dementia.
Interesting.
I forget the percentage, but it was like pretty high. So
Okay.
reading is good for the brain.
There you go. On the other end of the spectrum, maybe speaking to people that I would relate to more, my mindset's just a little different about some of those things,
Yeah.
right? For me, it's less about less about how it helps me. I put it in two different categories. I think some of the things I do are how to help me through my day and how to stay fresh in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And then trying to stack those things with things that also help me in the longer picture, right? In the moment, I've found one of the most beneficial things that I've reintegrated back in is not just walks with our family, because I love that. It's like our time to connect. And I think human connection is important, but also walks by myself
Yeah.
because of how connected you get, especially if you're trying to chase doing more and handling more. Becoming a higher form doesn't always mean doing more, for sure. But in some capacity, if you want to achieve more, you have to do more. And I think among trying to like create that balance, I get so much peace from and mental health support from just going on a walk.
Well, let's like it's been your midday break. You're like,
Yep.
I work this chunk. I've got
Yep.
appointments, meetings, computer work, and then you go for a walk to just like refresh, reset the brain, start thinking about the next thing that, is on the agenda
Yeah.
or
And
where your attention needs to be.
yeah, that helps me from like a processing standpoint. But then on like the emotion management, I get so much more peace on from a different perspective in when I do strength training. I'm just a better person to be around when I'm lifting weights.
Yeah.
I get grumpy sometimes if I haven't lifted weights for a while.
Just like I get grumpy if I haven't eaten for a
Yeah,
while.
for sure. That's a thing in our house. For we call it, we have hangry
We do.
moments on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Everybody from the dogs to the boys, but
Yeah.
all in all, you have to find what works for you, and it's going to look different for everybody. And I talked about how like I have things that I do for my short term day to day, but my bigger picture vision is understanding that I want to identify as a dad who leads by example in the way that I provide for our family, the way that I protect our family. I can't protect our family if I'm not healthy, you know?
Totally.
And in today's day and age, protection doesn't look like what it did 100 years ago. But if I'm not fresh and physically capable, I can't do a whole lot. And it's crazy to me when we go out sometimes, and I hate to be judgmental, but I think it's human nature where I feel like, man, I think so many people underestimate how much better their life would be if they just prioritized themselves a little bit more.
Yeah.
And instead of focusing on, man, I really need to lose this 40 pounds. I feel like crap. Being like, imagine who I could be if I lost this 40 pounds.
How I would feel,
Yeah.
how my life would change.
How people would view me, what kind of success I could have,
What's
you know?
that? There's Jonathan Goodman.
Hmm.
He had posted something, and you've heard him say this before because we also have heard him in person speak. But it was like people will be like, "Oh, I would die for my family." It's like, but would you go on a walk for them?
Yeah.
Would you go take care of, would you go strength train for them? Because that's how you can take care of yourself, so you can take care of your family,
100%.
right?
100%. One of the best ways to be able to make this shift is by putting yourself in the right environment to be able to be around other like-minded people. When all you've ever known is the opposite of what's ideal, it is going to be wildly challenging and difficult for you to be able to elevate into that higher form of yourself if your surroundings are not supporting that, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. You are who your five closest people are.
Yeah,
What's
that was
that?
great.
Yeah,
You
I
nailed
know.
it. Leave the quotes to me,
Yes,
and we'll leave
I'm
the
sorry.
relatability to you.
What's the quote?
No, you're the some of the people you spend the most time around, or the five people you
Okay.
spend the most time around. I
Yeah.
didn't nail it either.
Yeah.
We're not perfect,
Okay.
but it's all good. The schedule, the space, the people, the environment. You know, we talk about that a lot with what we do at work. Is we really intentionally cultivated an environment where people feel safe and they feel like they can come work on themselves, and it can be a place where you can like check your personal life at the door and come in and really focus on becoming that next best version through your health and fitness. But it doesn't have to be just a gym. You can create that space at home. You can create that space anywhere, but it's about being intentional and going out and finding it. And it leads me to the last book. I was talking smack about how you bumped the mic earlier. Here I am. The last book that we hadn't talked about is Extreme Ownership. And I know this wasn't one that it's not your type of read.
Definitely not my first pick. Obviously, I know it's a great book, but it's not my nighttime reading of choice.
And it's definitely no like David Goggins in your face type of book, but I've always resonated with Jocko and this concept of extreme ownership, and I think it's definitely a little bit more of a assertive mindset around like if it impacts you, you own it, and you should be accountable for the things in your life. And if at the end of the day you tolerate something that you want to change, you're not going to see it change. The big quote he talks about is it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate, and
Yeah.
discipline equals freedom. And by going out and doing the things that the future version of yourself would do, that's discipline, is showing up to create the freedom to become the person you want to be. And by sitting back and tolerating the environment, the people, the space, the negative energy or environment or influences you have, it's going to be hard for you to level up if you don't let go of those things and you don't change them.
Yeah.
And that is just so important for people to hear. And maybe if you're in that environment, you don't know how to change, like some practical advice is like take some time to separate. You don't have to do anything crazy, but go for a walk,
Yeah.
get out in nature. We were not built to sit on our butt indoors and not get fresh air and
Well,
sunlight.
and find some time, whether it's on a walk, maybe you take a staycation or a weekend away, but like what, where do you want to go? What do you want to be doing? Who do you want to do it with? Where are you now? What needs to change?
And act.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like you have
Yep.
to assess it first,
Yep.
though. You're like, what do I want to do? What's currently happening that's not serving that goal?
Yep.
And then like, okay, what are the things that need to change? And then yes, act, do them, go change them. Because if you don't, then you're just going to keep playing in the cycle.
That kind of ties together the bigger picture of all of it. We live in a world where it's easy to be complacent and get comfortable and to just go through the motions and to do the next thing and get the job, work 9 to 5, have the kids, have the house, join the rat race.
Yeah.
But there's so much more out there. And to get to a point to where you become that highest form of yourself, you don't conform to the norm. That was a lot of rhyming.
You don't conform to
You
the
don't
norm.
conform to the norm to get to the higher form. There we go. We got it. I think it's one of those things where you've got to make it something that's important to you. You got to create the environment and the space and put the people around you. And
And if you're not doing that, then it's not that important to you at the end of the day. So
hard truth bomb right there.
we're all about hard truths and
Being
spitting it
direct.
straight.
People need that in their life. I've had those coaches and those people and those support structures and heard some painful feedback that created change. And it's easy to want to be nice to people and to tell them what they want to hear and make them feel good, but it's admirable to be around people and that you respect that will help set you straight and on the right path.
And don't tolerate stuff.
Yep.
They take action and have the confrontation.
Well, hey, we are 2 episodes deep. And if you liked what we talked about today, please share this with other people. Hit the like, subscribe, follow buttons. We are at Higher Form Podcast on Instagram,
Instagram.
on YouTube, on the Avexia Health and Performance page. On Facebook, it's Higher Form Podcast. You can find Britni at Britni Briney on Instagram. You can find me at Nick_Briney on Instagram. And as always, if you're looking for somebody to help you stay accountable, or you need that community, you need that environment, especially if you're in the Kansas City area, but even if you're not, reach out to us. We'd love to answer any questions, love to help give you that support and structure and guidance you need to continue chasing your higher form.
Yeah.
Catch you next time.